dust on my name and hands. Preacher said, son, stay straight, but he never did understand. Sheriff took my daddy's land for a deal that turned to dirt. So I took my pride and my 45 and I gave back what he earned. Yeah, I broke the law, but the law broke first. It turned his back when the good folks heard. You can call me sinner, you can call me cursed, but I broke the law, 'cause the law broke first. Judge in town wore a Sunday smile, but he drank with the devil at night. Told me, boy, you can't win that fight, but I've been wrong and right. So I lit a match to the courthouse steps, watched the truth go up in flames. Sometimes you gotta make your stand, even when they call your name. Yeah, I broke the law, but the law broke first. It turned its back when the good folks heard. You can call me sinner, you can call me cursed, but I broke the law, 'cause the law broke first. Now I ain't no hero, I ain't no saint, but I know damn well what justice ain't. If the law won't bleed for the people's word, then it ain't worth the paper it's written on, sir. Yeah, I broke the law, but the law broke first. I broke the law, but the law broke first. You stole my faith and left me worse. You can call me wanted, I've seen worse, 'cause I broke the law when the law broke first. I broke the law, 'cause the law broke first. The law.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me.
Turn on your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding voice and control. Late night in Moscow, where nothing
eternal pain.
And here we go.
Welcome to the freak show, the best in town.
What is going on, Hive? Happy, what day is it? Tuesday? It's great to see you all. It feels weird now that the sun is still out. When I start streaming, the room behind me is a little bit brighter, not as blue. Got the audio coming in loud and clear. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm your host, Birdie. I go live weeknights at 7 p.m. Central. Welcome to the Hive Mind. This is a contrarian thinking live stream. So if you are easily rattled or offended on behalf of others, you're probably not going to like this stream. You are surrounded by a group of critical thinkers and people who don't just blindly accept what the news tells them. We've been recently discussing the Idaho 4 case at lengths, which, by the way, is popping off with the release of the new book, Broken Plea, written by Christopher Whitcomb, who will be on the stream for an interview, which I'm very, very excited about. I have so many questions to ask him, and I know you all in the chat are going to have a ton of questions for him as well. Now, this evening, I do believe what we are going to see start to play out with the release of this new book. As you know, it's not necessarily leaked, but Barnes & Noble, if you're a member there, you got it up to a week early. And so it's out there. It's out there. It's been disseminated, and it's making its rounds all over social media. And in the spirit of staying current and in the spirit of making sure that we are jumping on everything and anything that can prove what we've been told in the Idaho 4 narrative is just I don't know what it is. It's a load of garbage. It's BS. The narrative surrounding that case might be fake. We don't know what happened. We are just taking everything that the news says or Dateline says and comparing it to documents that are full of black boxes. A ton of redactions. It looks like the document up on the screen that you see in the upper right-hand corner. But anything that they do leave unredacted is the truth that they don't want you to see or notice, it certainly seems like. Now, as everybody is filing in, please go ahead, hit that like button. Hitting like, hitting subscribe, and sharing this to your normie NPC friends who think that you're crazy for still looking into this case, if you've been doing so for quite some time, is also free. If you would like to use the emojis in the chat and have your name turn green as well as the Hive logo next to your name, you can join Hive Plus. All of the streams will stay free, but the people who are a part of Hive Plus and are feeling generous enough or kind enough to support the stream, they will have access to those emojis and they will get a few extra perks. I will be announcing the Hive Plus chat stream here tomorrow, or at least this week, as to when it's going to be. Very excited about that, to have a smaller, more intimate chat. And in addition to that, Hive, for a long time, I could never remember when we had switched from TikTok live over to YouTube. And I got an alert today on my YouTube channel that today is actually our official birthday. So we, as of today, are 1 year over on YouTube. And it has been an incredible first year building the Hive. We are almost at 50,000 subscribers now, which is insane to think about. We got well over 100,000 on TikTok and now 50,000 on YouTube. Not that numbers are everything by any means, but it just goes to show that the approach that we take to things like this, people enjoy being able to say whatever they want in the chat and speak their mind and not be exiled because they might have a different opinion. So the GOAT award goes to everybody in here. And in addition to that, I bought myself a first birthday gift. I have an Ethernet cord now. It's like 200 feet long, and it goes all the way across our house, into the other room, into the closet, and directly into the back of our router. So hopefully we are not going to have any more lags on the stream. Knock on wood. Which, by the way, also, sometimes I'm still in the habit of knocking on wood. If you know the history of knocking on wood and Yeah, I got to stop because then I'm just going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm sure there are people that do know what knocking on wood originated from. And wow, Gurmilla, Jesus. Unbelievable. Wow. $100 super chat to start this stream. Are you kidding me? Dude, you get the GOAT award. That's an all-time Hall of Famer super chat. Wow. I got to do something here. We're going to have a placeholder, but I will. That is in the record books. Hang on, Gurmilla. That is so nice of you and so kind of you. Thank you. Hang on. Let me just write this out. This is a placeholder for now. Let me go set this up. That is so cool. Thank you again for that. That is very kind of you, and I appreciate that. And so now Gurmilla is officially on the back table. And also, Gurmilla is the one who came up with the t-shirt idea that has all of the redacted boxes on it that just says trust us. And you will be able to see that if you go to our new merch store, which actually below the stream now, which is really cool. Shout out to the mods again for just staying on it. But if you go, where is it? So this is the design that Gurmilla had come up with. So it's pretty badass. And she would always put that in the comments. So thank you again for that. We got the best people that tune in here. Hands down, no question. No question. So, all righty. Now, I do have a massive announcement. As I posted in the Discord earlier today, I said, do not miss this stream as I will have a huge announcement. And so, going back to what I said when I started this, which is we know that the book Broken Plea has been disseminated online. It's making its way. I thought, well, why would we wait until the 29th to have Christopher Whitcomb on the stream? And we had emailed his team, and I was on the phone with his manager this morning, and we were talking and discussing if it would be possible to have him on earlier. And he said, yes, we are aware Barnes & Noble has, you know, this early book release. And so we're just going to blow the entire embargo. We're going all in. We're going to let it out. We're going to have Chris start doing appearances. And so, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night, April 22nd, 7 p.m. Central, Christopher Whitcomb will be live here in the Hive. And we have a full 2 hours with him. So we have him from 7 p.m. Central to 9 p.m. Central. And I'm very excited to get a crack at Chris when it comes to asking him questions about this book. I was able to get a digital copy of the book. And so I have read through this. I got a bunch of notes, and I mean, I believe the hype. Okay. It is an incredibly well-written book, and I wanted to print it out so that I could, you know, take notes. And you'll see, I mean, they have an extremely detailed timeline. If you have not seen this yet, let me show you here. I mean, they have texts from people that we have not seen or ever heard of as far as some names go. And when it comes to certain things that we talk about a lot, being Dylan and Bethany, Chris does not hold back. He makes it obvious that there should have been a lot more questions about this 8-hour delay. The investigation and how he words it is really well done. Now, in addition to Chris being on the stream yesterday, or I'm sorry, not being on the stream yesterday, in addition to me talking to Chris's manager about having him come on the stream tomorrow, a few days ago, after we had confirmed Chris Whitcomb coming on the stream, we decided to take a chance at getting Dr. Turvey on the stream. And while he did say he is unfortunately unable to accept that invitation, I was still lucky enough to have a 40-minute phone call with Dr. Turvey over the weekend. And Dr. Turvey is a very direct and straightforward gentleman. He does not sugarcoat anything. And now, after I've been able to read this book where they talk about Dr. Turvey's investigation, I have a better insight as to why Dr. Turvey was as fired up as he was. So I'm going to have Chris on the stream tomorrow. Stay tuned for that, because I'm going to ask some questions that Dr. Turvey and I had discussed, specifically around Ann Taylor, which will shock you. It shocked me. I did not know what to make of this. And I did ask Dr. Turvey for my last question. I'll share this with you early before tomorrow. I said, so Dr. Turvey, call me Brent. Okay. So Brent, you're obviously still actively testifying. So he wants to be careful as far as how many shows he's going to do and the backgrounds of people's shows and the size of the platform. I get it. He's still testifying and he's knee deep in a bunch of cases. But I did say, is this over? And he was like, yeah, no, it's not over. It's so much worse than anybody even knows. And so, I texted him and said, thank you again so much for the time. And let me pull this up here just to see what he said back, because here it is. I said, just want to say thank you again for taking some time to chat with me earlier this afternoon. Appreciate your time and advice. Have a great weekend. And he goes, it was my pleasure. And I'm hopeful that you took what I said in the spirit that it was intended. I'm very interested to see how you treat Whitcomb. His book's amazing and people should read it if they are interested in this case. And so it's kind of crazy that Dr. Turvey texted me. Nonetheless, it's a good contact for us to have, and maybe one day he will change his mind. But if you have not ordered Broken Plea, please do. I'm shamelessly plugging it at this point. We need everybody on board with what's said in this book. There's Reddit threads that are already picking apart a couple simple mistakes that I'm actually really curious to ask him about. How do you say that Bethany was the one that called 911 and then switch it to Dylan? And I don't want to call him out, and I don't intend to call him out, but just little things like, was it as hard for you to dig through these documents doing the research as it was for us? So he talks about what he has access to in that book and where he got this all from. And he really does kind of put it back onto us after finishing the book that what are we going to do about this? We need to start talking to people. We need to start demanding answers. And that's what we're going to do. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention about this. Oh, okay. I remembered right as I started saying that. Tomorrow night, when we have Christopher Whitcomb in the Hive, I am, from the bottom of my heart, asking everybody in here, while yes, this is a chat that I don't control what you say, I trust my mods in moderating it. Can we please make a promise to each other that if anything is said that we disagree with, can we be respectful in the chat? Because one thing that I really pride myself in is that when I have guests on the stream, I tell them, I'm like, look, my goal is to have this be your show. I want to set you up to talk about the things that you know best, whether that's another creator, whether that's somebody like Chris or Scott Payne or Jeffrey Gentry, right? I want to give everybody the best viewing experience. And if people are just super caught up on a comment and they're missing the other point, I'm asking everybody nicely, please, they read the comments too. And obviously we want to continue to have guests on. It doesn't mean you can't have an opinion, right? But we obviously want to be respectful of everybody, as we always preach. You know, you can disagree with us, but let's do it in a way that, you know, we don't scare the guests off, Hive. Okay. Type of 1 if you're on board with that. Because don't get me wrong, I agree. There's got to be an intensity. But when there's people that are willing to come on our side, you know, we gotta be maybe a little bit gentler. All right. So 1's in the chat. All righty. Cool. All righty. So now I did see, I think somebody had said, and mods, correct me if I'm wrong, the chat was flying. Did somebody say that Devil's Advocates is having his interview premiere tonight? Did I just see that? So I wonder if his manager, Russ, was letting everybody know that they're going to do this. So I would not be surprised if okay, so it is on. DA's having his interview tonight. Is he playing it tonight? Let me see. One second. Oh, wow. So DA is currently live with him. Should we have a little bit of a watch party? Do you guys want to watch this and kind of scout out some questions that we could answer or have Chris answer for us tomorrow? Should we tune into this type of 1 if you think that'd be fun? And we can kind of, like I said, have a little viewing party of this and see what this interview is all about. 1's in the chat. All right. That way we can kind of bounce some ideas off each other. All righty, let's do it. So I'm jumping to
something really significant about this case in particular, and that's when I got involved.
I think it stunned a lot of us because some of us, you know, that have been getting into the weeds for 3 years, we thought it was a largely circumstantial case. It didn't look like an open and shut case to us, and we're like, well, wait a minute, you've got cell phone pings that ping off the tower that services the house. That's not the same thing as he was stalking the girls outside the house. And there was a lot of things that I personally was excited for the trial because I said this is a largely circumstantial case, and in large part, I think honestly if you listen to their wording, I'm not sure they were even going to present the DNA evidence, which is the number one thing I think the public has been convinced that Koberger was the guy because they got his DNA. How can you argue about it? It's a done deal. I want to take you back.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, right. I think everyone in America did. I think everyone in the world. In fact, this is an international case. People watch this from Australia and Europe and all over the place. I mean, this is.
You know, before I do play this, I want to make sure that I'm even allowed to do this. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't seem like it is. So I'll have the mods check on that first. But this is obviously from Devil's Advocates. I'm just looking this up to see if we can do this. No, and Thierry Dodd, my interview is tomorrow night. Just again, tomorrow night, Christopher Whitcomb will be in the Hive. So, yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to see what happens with this.
Huge deal. I want to go back to the plea deal. It was July 2nd, 2025. And I was actually in the courthouse when he changed his plea. And it stunned me because 2.5 years he's maintained his factual innocence. And then all of a sudden they're saying, do you agree that you killed these 4 people? And he says, yes. And I'm just thinking, how can this be? This doesn't make any sense. The biggest part I think that really stunned me was when Judge Hippler asked the state to do a recitation of what their case would have been had it gone to trial. And
has Chris Whitcomb said a word since we started playing this? DA gets super excited. Curious. Jeez. Yeah, well, you know, it is what it is. I mean, as far as I don't necessarily want to do it and get in trouble for it, but nonetheless, I mean, you guys will be in for a great interview tomorrow with Chris here in the Hive. Now, one of the things that I will say too is, you know, people are like, "Oh, let him get the views." I would say if anybody thinks that I'm the creator that gives a shit about that, you're sorely mistaken. I don't. I would not do that to somebody. I just thought if we could have a watch party, that could be fun. However, thank you to who said, I don't know if you can do the live restream of it. So, nonetheless, tomorrow is going to be epic with Chris Whitcomb on it. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is I'd like to talk about this. So, Discord Dawn had sent me this. This is very, very, very interesting. And what this is actually Judge Hippler's overturned rulings. Okay, so Judge Hippler has only ever had one ruling overturned, which is kind of crazy. And in February of 2026, the Idaho Supreme Court issued an opinion reversing part of Judge Hippler's decision regarding a complex civil dispute. The High Court found that the district court had erred in several areas. Now, long story short, does anybody find it weird that he's only got one thing, or whatever you want to say, one ruling overturned? Because I would be shocked that a judge with that long of a career has only ever had one thing that he can go back and say, yep, that's the only one that I got overturned. That seems, I mean, how many cases does the average judge in their career have overturned by the end of it? Let's just see. Now, and then after I read this, I'll be getting into some of the things of the book. And while I'm doing so and getting this ready, what I'd like for you all to do is start typing some questions out. And here's what I'm going to do, actually. Let me pull this up. I'm going to pull up Broken Plea. Okay. I got the green light from his manager. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually really cool. And by the way, the average judge will have roughly an 8 to 15% or approximately 13% if you're in the appeal courts, but there's like 2 to 6 reversals a year, 1 to 4 a year if you have a career length of 15 to 30 years. So lifetime overturned cases averages 40 to 60, which is crazy. But nonetheless, so this is pretty cool. And I felt honored to have gotten this from Russ. We're looking at the digital copy of Broken Plea before it was printed out. So this is pretty sweet. And we're going to be going through this just so that we can get people familiarized with some of the things inside the book, since we will be having Christopher Whitcomb on tomorrow night. So I'm going to read some of this, okay? So this is kind of a read along. Now, this is how the book starts. An FBI colleague once told me justice is a moving target. I found that odd from a man who had dedicated his life to the battle between good and evil. But after 15 years in the Bureau, I began to understand his wisdom. Many believe the American legal system is the best in the world, but few would argue that it is perfect. Cops err, technologies fail, and witnesses falter, placing the burden of proof on lawyers who win or lose based on how much a defendant can afford to pay. I felt like that line was powerful, especially knowing that Ann Taylor is a public defender. Now, the first time that Chris had heard Bryan Kohberger's name, this is when Bryan was preparing for trial with the death penalty on the line. The prosecutors were claiming the DNA and cell tower pings linked him to the scene, but they had no weapon, witnesses or motive. Kohberger's team seemed to dismiss the case as flawed and predicted exoneration. I paid little attention, thinking experts would sort it all nicely. Now, right from this paragraph, in my opinion, this gave me, it made me feel some type of way, because this is an exact talk track, that we say many times here in the Hive, which is they linked into the scene, but it's off cell tower pings, they have a wide range, no weapon, no witnesses, no motive. And Kohberger's team seemed to dismiss it as, yeah, he's going to be exonerated. So that gave me a lot of hope. This is where my eyes became bug eyes, Hive, and I think yours will too. So he says 2 things happened almost simultaneously. Kohberger changed his plea to guilty, and a colleague called to say he'd seen the file. Terabytes worth of lab reports, autopsy photos, and forensic analysis. In his opinion, something was wrong. DNA on the knife sheath had seemingly been mishandled. The crime scene appeared to have been cleaned and altered. Timelines didn't seem to add up, and witness statements were confusing. Looking deeper, I came to believe he was right. Now, whatever happened that Sunday morning at 1122 King Road will likely never be revealed through a slow drip of FOIA requests and police disclosures. We know that Bryan's pled guilty to the murders. No other individuals have been implicated or charged with the crimes, and the individuals discussed in this book have denied any involvement. Throughout the book, you're going to read actual police reports and interviews included verbatim, and the only changes made were to periodically correct the misspelling of someone's name as to not confuse the reader. Now, before I go on, Hive, we are having, I'm going to still call it a sneak peek for the majority of people, but we are seeing the version of Broken Plea before it was printed, and there's even some editor's notes in this, which I think is remarkable that we have the opportunity to see this. So please, please, please hit the like button right now, Hive. Take 2 seconds, hit the like button, share this out. We are reading Broken Plea, and Christopher Whitcomb will be on the stream tomorrow for a full 2-hour live interview. So now I have finished the book, and there's a couple of things that I'm going to point out so that everybody is up to speed for tomorrow's interview. If you've been following this case, many things throughout the book we know, but then you come across a handful of bombshells right out of the bat or right out of the gate, which are just like, whoa, what? So moving on. And I'll actually ask you all, how do you want me to approach this? Would you like me to read it and narrate this? Do you want me to stop and discuss it? How should we go about this? Because I know everybody has different ways. Like, I like to use a highlighter when I read if I'm trying to remember it. I do think it's important for us to have a discussion and come up with some questions. So consider this prep work. It almost feels like I'm back in my college football days, and it's like we're watching game tape right now. We're scouting. How can we have the best interview? And so I have my list of questions, but I know you all are a smart group of folks that will help me come up with some better ones. So it goes into, this is just talking about the background of it, but I'll start with this. All right. It's been 2.5 years since Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xander Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found dead at a 3-story house in a town called Moscow. This is one of the most sensationalized crimes this century, and everyone from Reddit bloggers to legacy media have covered the case in heavy rotation. In a last-minute legal maneuver to the rest of his life, in the last-minute legal maneuver to avoid the death penalty, Kohberger has agreed to a plea deal that will land him in prison for the rest of his life. And as in most cases of this nature, emotions run high, with 4 separate families trying to make sense of an incomprehensible evil. Gag orders have made facts of the case hard to come by. Speculation runs rampant. I'll do this so you guys can read it. Miss Thompson, Miss Jennings, and pardon me, Judge Hippler stumbles over names in his hastily prepared notes. Miss Taylor, Miss Masseth, and Miss Barlow. The courtroom is small, quiet. The prosecution sits 5 wide below and to the judge's left. The defense sits stage right, a team of 4, with the defendant in the middle. Brian Koberger looks focused, attentive. He is wearing a crisply pressed shirt and matching paisley tie. His hair looks neatly groomed, his eyebrows trimmed, his hands folded on the table in front of him as he sits bolt straight in his chair. The states present Mr. Thompson. Judge Hippler says with a nod. He is known for fair and measured opinions in a broad array of cases. Records suggest that only one of his rulings have been overturned in 12 years on the bench. Mr. Hurwitz, Miss Jennings, and I love that he adds the ums in there. Mr. Nye is here as well. Did I miss anybody? And he looks directly at the woman seated to Mr. Thompson's left. Miss Allen is here as well. The lead prosecutor advises she's one of 4 members of his team, but apparently not on the judge's list. Miss Allen is here as well. Very well. Thank you. Perhaps the oversight makes sense considering the speed and shocking nature of this turn of events. Just weeks before jury selection was slated to begin with a trial date set for August, Brian Koberger is said to have changed his mind. After 30 months of steadfast denial, the defense apparently wants to make a deal. And for those wondering if the defense might try some kind of nolo contender argument to avoid a firing squad, that will not happen today. The state of Idaho does not allow for an Alford plea where the defendant maintains innocence while acknowledging evidence sufficient to convict. But this is a case of capital murder. Koberger's only option is to cop to all counts and throw himself upon the mercy of the court. So he does a good job at really setting the scene for maybe people that haven't followed this case so closely, or just a good reminder for us all. All right, we are here today to entertain a change of plea. Judge Hippler says, stating one of the few known facts of the case. His gag orders have reduced disclosure to nuanced interpretation of motions from the defense. Before we start, I want to address some issues of concerns. It seems important that we pause here to point out that everyone in the courtroom has issues of concern. True crime is the hottest genre in entertainment, and this is the crime of the century, meaning America is hooked with prurient interest on the tragedy of vibrant youth cut down in the middle of the night by a PhD student in criminology. There's already been a book written by a journalist from the New York Times and another famous author best known for fiction. Amazon Prime has released a documentary that many criticize for relying on family photos and haunting music in lieu of facts. Peacock has one too, as does Dateline. And again, Hippler goes through, and we all know how this happens, but it's just really setting the stone or setting the scene when Brian Koberger changed his plea. One second here. Okay, here we go. As to count 2, the state would have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought, kill and murder Madison Mogen, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogen, from which she died. Calling her a human being somehow makes the nightmare worse. As to count 3, the state would have had to prove that on the same date in Latah County at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought, kill and murder Kaylee Goncalves, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. Kaylee was attacked with savagery. Stabbing might have been the least of it. As to count 4, the state would have had to have proven that on or about the same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice of forethought, murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. What the judge does not tell the world is that Xana fought violently for her life, wrestling with her killer on the floor of her room in a pool of blood. In this hearing, details about valor in the face of horror somehow fade, muffled beneath legal jargon and statutory prose. Here, only the butcher wins. And then to count 5, also murder in the first degree, that on or about November 13th, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice forethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven? Yes, Koberger states. And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true? Yes, Koberger says. So he goes on to finish that. And here is where we suspend the narrative long enough to ask an obvious question. What could be the point in writing a book about a story we already know? The answer begins with a 1963 Supreme Court decision titled Brady versus Maryland, in which the federal government ruled that prosecutors must disclose all evidence to the defense. This means Bill Thompson had to hand his files to Koberger's lawyer, Ann Taylor, who in turn farmed them out to experts for exculpatory opinion. This part gave me chills, Hive. As fate would have it, 2 of those experts seeking transparency provided me with a large chunk of Thompson's Brady disclosure, a cache of 59,000 files containing more than 200,000 largely unredacted exhibits, from autopsy photos to the contents of Koberger's phone. I have reviewed it all in my research for this book. So what he's saying is that, call it fate, call it chance, 2 of the experts that Ann Taylor farmed Bill Thompson's Brady disclosure out, 59,000 files, over 200,000 largely unredacted exhibits. 2 of those experts were colleagues of Christopher Whitcomb and gave him access to this information. So we're going to be getting into that here, and I'm going to go ahead because this just really goes through Bill Thompson stating what we've seen in the plea and the sentencing. So he reads, right? He goes through where Bill Thompson says, we moved to the morning of November 13th of 2022. The state's evidence would show that early mornings on that day, Mr. Koberger's phone left his Pullman residence. That phone was subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 in the morning and remained off until about 4:48 in the morning on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence includes, or would include at trial, a video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway just across the state line from Moscow that would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. I love this next part. Circumstantial evidence is perfectly admissible in a murder case, but a vehicle, quote, matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai seems a bit less than proof beyond reasonable doubt. And here comes one of the first bombshells, in my opinion. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residences then showed the defendant's car, the white Elantra, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning. And approximately 4:05 that morning, the defendant's car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped at the intersection of King and Queen Road, did a U-turn, and the state's evidence would show that defendant's car came back and parked behind and above 1122 King Road. And you guys just heard the amount of evidence that he had. He blatantly just says nothing in the files I reviewed show anything of the kind. So he goes on to say, Thompson does not mention seemingly significant flaws in this part of the case, including FBI laboratory reports that the state's DNA sample may have compromised less than 10 human cells. He does not mention the fact that the DNA sample was first sent to a private genetic genealogy lab in the Woodlands, Texas, where it was traced to 4 brothers, none of them who were named Koberger. He does not mention a potentially catastrophic chain of custody issues or the fact that handwritten Idaho State Police evidence retention forms note the sheath was not found on the bed. The sheath was found on the floor. Boom. First thing that was going through my head is, what? I reread it. He does not mention a potentially catastrophic chain of custody issues or the fact that handwritten Idaho State Police evidence retention notes say the sheath was not on the bed, but it was on the floor. So let's pause there. We have a guy being Christopher Whitcomb, ex-FBI, author of the book. Again, for people just tuning in, he'll be on the stream tomorrow for a 2-hour interview. He got to see Bill Thompson's Brady disclosure cache of 59,000 files and over 200,000 photographs of autopsies and other notes. The sheath's found on the floor. Now, right away, my head went to, well, that's strange, because Jeffrey Gentry was saying how the blood spots would have been like what he would call blood rain. It rained down on it. Well, how many times have we said, how is there not more blood on that damn sheath? Well, you could still have blood rain if it's on the floor, and it would make sense that it wouldn't have all of the blood all around it if it wasn't on the bed the whole time. But if it was on the floor, that blood and spraying off, that would make a lot more sense to me. That would absolutely make a ton more sense. Therefore, it's insinuating that, yeah, ISP notes say that the sheath was found on the floor. The Idaho State Police notes say this damn sheath was found on the floor. We've only ever seen pictures of it in the bed. How the hell did it get on the bed? Make that make sense. Now, I'm going to have a little bit of a spoiler alert, but because I was telling everybody that I spoke on the phone with Dr. Turvey for a while, and I didn't have a chance to bring this up. I wish I did. He had another meeting to get to. You get to a point in this book where Dr. Turvey starts talking about the chain of custody and names written on the evidence envelope, and how he doesn't recognize 2 of the names, and the other 4 names look like it's all the same handwriting. Dr. Turvey says, almost word for word, I hope I'm remembering it word for word, so don't exactly quote me on this, but he alludes to this. He says, how do we even know that the sheath is from this crime? How crazy is that? The defense expert says, how do we even know the sheath is from this crime? The chain of custody has 2 names. They don't even know who they are. And the other 4 names have the exact same handwriting, and they go through that in the book. Back to the book. Now, as this is a plea hearing and not a trial, the prosecution is not bound to present any particular point of evidence, only what they choose to present in their statement at the hearing. The state's evidence would show that Xana Kernodle was still awake at this time. Her room was not on the 3rd floor. It was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana and ended up killing her also with a large knife. Now, this part, I don't know what to make of this part. Christopher Whitcomb goes on to say that Bill Thompson does not explain that Xana died 30 feet from where she was first attacked. Okay? He does not explain the forensically impossible trail of apparently altered evidence Xana left along the way, including blood spatter that was diluted with an unknown substance. He does not explain how 2 survivors inside the house did not notice her screams, though the audio recording from a surveillance camera down the street did. He does not explain how Xana's boyfriend, a 6'4", 228-pound football player, never got out of bed to help her as she fought for her life just 3 feet away. Thompson, this is also kind of crazy, or this is very crazy, but Thompson does not mention that Ethan's undiluted blood was found at the top of the stairs leading down to the 1st floor. Other stains somehow hidden under a box of White Claw beverages. Now, I want everybody to look at this for a second, because when I said, wait, it was hidden under a box of White Claws, I think back to my stream with Jeffrey Gentry. Guys, If they moved this box of White Claws, if that box of White Claws was moved on top of Ethan's undiluted blood, holy hell, that to me is a huge, huge, massive bombshell. One, that the blood's undiluted. Two, that it was hidden by a box of White Claws. And how many times have we looked at this placement of the blood where we thought, okay, maybe it's over here? And we've seen the White Claw thing. I don't know about you all. I've never once thought, wow, I wonder if somebody covered up that blood. And now I start to think about all this blood here and how nobody noticed it on the way up. I mean, geez, who are the only people that are up in this area that would have had time to maybe strategically place White Claw box over some blood so that people don't see it? Well, I have my thoughts on that, but that is wild to me. Going back to the book, he does not mention apparently overwhelming forensic evidence of crime scene alteration, a cleanup of the house's common spaces, or the highly likely involvement of a second assailant. Okay, so Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence that there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. Right here, I believe, is one of our first insights into Ethan's wounds on his legs. This has been an area of questioning for not just me, but a lot of people in here as far as the wounds on Ethan's legs. And what Christopher Whitcomb reveals here, I think, does a good job at providing some sort of visualization of it, again, as graphic in nature as it is. But Thompson does not address the fact that Ethan's naked body was covered with a blanket sometime after he was dead. He does not divulge evidence showing that despite a trail of blood from Mogan's room on the 3rd floor to Xana's on the 2nd, not a drop was found in the bed where Ethan supposedly died at the hands of a lone offender. There is no mention that a clump of hair was discovered in Ethan's closed fist, presumably pulled in a fight with his killer. There is no citation of laboratory evaluation because there was none. So Ethan, as maybe most people have heard by now, it's one of the biggest bombshells as well. Ethan had a clump of hair. Dr. Turvey brought that up to me on the phone. I so wish that one day, and if Dr. Turvey by chance is watching this, which I highly doubt it, but if he is, just, man, I would love the opportunity to ask him about some of this stuff. And I get it. He's still testifying, and you got to be careful when you're an expert's expert like he is with what shows and stuff you go on. I get it. But man, Ethan had hair. How long was the hair? Did the hair have roots on it? Did the hair have blood on it? But how do you not test a clump of hair found in a victim's hand? Think of how disgusting and grotesque it is to keep that from the public, everybody. They've now, within the first 20 pages, okay, we are on page 19, everybody. We're on page 19. And so far, we have learned that Ethan's undiluted blood was found covered up by a White Claw box. We have found that Ethan was fully naked and covered up after the fact. Ethan had a clump of hair in his hand, and that the damn knife sheath was found on the floor, according to the ISP notes. Let that sink in. That alone, not testing that hair in his hand, this is already insanity that this is known, and they still accepted a plea or take the plea deal out of it. People have their strong opinions on it. That it was even allowed to get to the point where just to get the death penalty off the table, you had to take a plea. That is sickening and it's disgusting. And it really goes to show you how scary this gets and how quickly it gets, for you never know what's going to happen. You have crime scene investigators lying about where the sheath of the knife they never found was discovered. And one of the victims had hair in his hand. They don't test it. Clown world. Unbelievable. The hair, labeled debris, was never examined beyond color and length. There was no attempt to identify its source using DNA. There were 2 other roommates in the house. And again, this is now quoting Bill Thompson, and they were already asleep inside. During the course of this, one of the roommates awoke, looked out her door, not knowing what was going on, saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black belt, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where the sliding door is that I mentioned before. This is where Chris Whitcomb starts to cook a little bit. Now, this is interesting. Thompson is talking about reports attributed to surviving witness Dylan Mortensen. Body camera footage recorded by MPD Officer Mitch Nunez proves that Dylan never mentioned the belt or the container in her first interview Sunday afternoon, standing outside of the house. She did not mention it during her second interview. Later that afternoon, with Officer Lawrence Mowry at the Moscow police station. She did not discuss the belt or the container until days later in the presence of her lawyer during a November 17th interview with ISP Detective Vicky Gooch. When asked what she remembered, police reports show Mortensen said she did not remember much of anything. Instead of pressing the issue, Gooch reassured Mortensen that she was a witness, not a suspect, and asked very little of probative value. At approximately 4:20 that morning, that the defendant's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. White car, yes. Defendant identified as the driver, no. The evidence would show that following the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And I love this line. This is brilliantly written, and I appreciate when people are able to articulate a sarcastic yet just so true, or such a true point made. And really what that means is that no one knows anything at all about where the car actually went. As Bill Thompson says, he took back roads because he knew there was cameras. And then Chris Whitcomb just says, now, meaning no one knows anything at all about where the car actually went. At 4:48 that morning, the defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that the phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a roadside or a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks back, heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington, pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning. This assertion is slightly more accurate, though in my opinion, it's misleading. Analysis by the FBI's Cellular Analysis Survey Team, or the CAS team, shows tower connections to Koberger's phone, but their graphically animated courtroom presentation only claims accuracy to within 13 miles. Despite prosecution assertions, cell pings place Koberger nowhere near the scene. This is interesting. So, in fact, such a photo, because they talked about the thumbs up picture. In fact, such a photo was not out of character or in some way unique. Koberger's phone was filled with a large number of selfies, photos of hiking, eating dinner with his family, or petting his dog. He seemed to like baseball, especially the Yankees, and he had numerous socially awkward selfies and had Googled porn a grand total of 3 times. Among 3,509 text messages he sent or received in the 4 months leading up to the crimes, all but 8 were to his family. Nothing suggests premeditation. So I'm going to skip ahead because, again, I want to get through some main points here. One of them being the DNA. The FBI guidelines for DNA submission to the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, require a sample of at least 1 nanogram per kilo in weight. Excuse me. The sample transferred from the sheath to the Q-tip weighed 0.16 nanogram, less than 20% of the required sample size for testing. Again, just another thing. How does that happen and how is that allowed? You have less than 20% of the required sample size and they're still testing it. Bill Thompson goes on to say, I can tell the court, public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. Nothing. This is a death penalty case. It's just, like I said, it's grotesque. It's so wild. So the defendant's car, this part was also interesting to me. It made me raise an eyebrow. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside, and the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill. Kohberger's pre-doctoral degrees were in psychology. Bill. When police searched his car, they found empty wrappers, a Band-Aid, empty water bottles, miscellaneous receipts, spare change, and the hotel room card holder from where he drove cross-country with his father. It's just ridiculous. This is where they go through the formalities of Kohberger being sentenced. Now, what the world actually knows after 2.5 years of investigation comes down to a few undisputed facts. Within the walls of the 3-story structure at 1122 King Road, 4 young students were cut down in the prime of life. On the 3rd floor, Kaylee Goncalves lay beaten, smothered, and slashed, with Maddie Mogan cuddled beside her, posed as if napping. On the 2nd floor, Xana Kernodle was found spread eagle in a sprawl of coat hangers and shoes, with her boyfriend murdered in bed just a few feet away. What the world does not yet know is that Brian Kohberger's guilty plea may have negligently whitewashed one of the great travesties of modern jurisprudence. In lieu of trial, no one will ever know how a lone assassin with no ties to any of the victims entered the house on King Road in the middle of the night, committed 4 murders in less than 4 minutes, and escaped without a trace. What were his motives? Who was his target? Why did he not kill 2 witnesses who waited 8 hours before calling police? You could leave the jury with that as a closing statement, everybody. In order to answer these questions and truly accept Kohberger's plea, we must go back to that awful night in Moscow and re-examine the case for ourselves. Yes, justice remains the realm of lawyers and courts, but we are now all a jury of Kohberger's peers with every right to weigh the evidence as presented. Truth beyond reasonable doubt is our objective. Here is a letter from Brian Kohberger. Dear Scout, this is his dog. Earlier, you and I, unbeknownst to you, communicated. I have no doubt that your heart was conscious of what I intended. Always of your pack, brother, Brian C. Kohberger. Letter to his dog from Latah County Jail. We now, guys, okay. If you type a 1 if this is the first time you're hearing this book. Type a 1 if this is the first time you're hearing this book, because this first chapter, titled Suicide, French Fries, and the Silver Sedan. And also, by the way, how cool is it that we have access to this? Again, thank you to Christopher Whitcomb and Russ for not only agreeing to come on to the show, but providing, myself with access to this so that we can have the best interview possible before what they thought was going to be the official release date. I mean, this book's going bananas. The discussions around it are crazy. This chapter is okay. So I'm going to get into this right away. As odd as it might sound, everything we truly know about the Idaho murders starts with the song My Only Enemy during the middle section that sounds old school country after Jelly Roll's opening, but before Struggle Jennings jumps in on rap. My only enemy is me. And though some will wonder how a murder investigation begins with a song, we should consider the soundtrack to be a crucial part of a case that plays out like a made-for-TV movie. Despite 3 years of gag orders and obfuscation, the truth about what police found on November 13th, 2022 at 1122 King Road unfolds in documentary fashion. With 56 minutes on body camera video, unlike the officially redacted version, the actual tape reveals details that will prove critical in a forensic search for the truth. If we want to understand Kohberger's plea, we need to fully reconstruct the case against him. So guys, on the body cam where they have the black boxes and everything muted, right now we are getting an inside look as to what the officers said when they blacked out and muted the body cam. Buckle up, because there's a part of this that is shocking and yet also explains where some of the initial rumors started. And I think you're going to be quite surprised, as I was, as to who said it first. 911, what's 911 location of your emergency? Police involvement starts Sunday at 11:56 a.m. with Bethany Funk's call for help. Again, I'm curious why that says Bethany Funk, not Dylan Mortensen. Something is happening, she is heard saying in a widely scrutinized recording. Something happened in our house and we don't know what. Funk, of course, is one of two surviving roommates in the house at the time of the crimes. Investigators would later conclude that Brian Kohberger left the house around 4:17 a.m., which means Funk waited almost 8 hours before calling for help. What is the address of the emergency? Whitcomb 911 operator Carolina Calvin asks. How weird is it, too, that the 911 operator is through a company called Whitcomb and an author with the last name Whitcomb wrote the book? Just something kind of odd. Anyways, 1122, Funk tries to answer through tears. Oh, King Road. And is that a house or apartment? It's a house. Calvin tries to follow up with basic questions about the location and nature of the emergency, but Funk hands the phone to another female, later identified as Emily Allant. I'll talk to you guys, Allant says. We live at the Whites, so we're next to them. Okay, Calvin prods. Tell me exactly what's going on. One of the roommates is passed out and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up. Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. At that point, Funk returns to the phone, distraught. Okay, I need someone to keep the phone, Calvin scolds. Stop passing it around. Can I just tell you what happened pretty much? What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now? Funk tries to provide context. And again, what's so weird is how many times they're saying Funk. Funk tries to provide context, but Calvin wants current information, and things go back and forth until Funk hands the phone to a male, later identified as Hunter Johnson. He can be heard breathing heavily in the background as chaos ensues. She's not waking up, Funk says, returning to the phone a third time. Calvin calmly states, okay, one moment, I'm getting help started that way. She switches to emergency response protocols and in a single transmission launches what will be the biggest criminal investigation in Idaho history. Dispatching Moscow, law, ambulance, unconscious female, 1122 King Road. The 911 operator says, units responding, RPs advising the patient is not conscious, not breathing. We cut back to the body cam of Officer Mitch Nunez behind the wheel of his SUV as the audio kicks in. I didn't realize this part, but how he says it starts with a song in the beginning of this chapter, the Jelly Roll. He goes, and he puts the quote or the lyrics from the song. I'm up against something I can't beat. He is listening to Good Times radio in the background as the Motorola two-way chirps squelch between 10 codes. It's the very same AM FM system you listen to in your own Ford Explorer if it were not marked police. Many cops will tell you a little music comes in handy in the middle of a long shift where boredom poses the biggest threat to officer safety. In this case, the shift is Sunday morning after a home game weekend in which University of Idaho football Vandals took a shellacking from UC Davis. Much of the campus is sleeping off a night of bar hops and house parties. The campus is quiet. Reports have been filed. Patrol vehicles are gassed up. It's too late for coffee, not yet time for lunch. Multiple people at the scene are advising that a roommate at the scene is passed out. A woman's voice breaks through the Jelly Roll song, not waking up. Moscow 170 en route, Nunez responds, using his badge number as a call sign. Copy that, 20-year-old female unconscious trying to get further. Officer Nunez hits the gas without employing a siren and pulls up in front of 1122 King Road at 12 o'clock, noon, and 8 seconds. He shuts down his engine, goes around to the rear of marked unit MPD-5 and retrieves a blaze orange EMS bag. Where's she at? He calls out, walking briskly toward the house. There are 3 women standing outside, Dylan Mortensen, Bethany Funk, and Emily Allant. They look visibly distraught. Where's she at? Do you have a defibrillator? Funk asks, still on the phone with Calvin. Yep, where's she at? Where's she at? Hunter Johnson is standing in the open doorway wearing shorts and a blue-green hoodie. Where at? Nunez asks, entering the house. Up here, Johnson responds, leading the officer up a staircase to the 2nd floor. We got a call from them this morning that something wasn't okay, that something really wasn't normal, and I just came in here to check in here, and somebody's down. Johnson leads Nunez through the living room, past the edge of a white table set up for beer pong. The place is a mess from recent parties, but Nunez is focused on what appears to be a female on the floor at the end of the hallway. Even from the top of the 1st floor stairs, he can tell that she is lying face up in a dried stew of mayhem. This is not a passed out co-ed. Fuck, Nunez says. Hunter leads him down the hall to what now is obviously a lifeless body. And I checked to see if she's breathing, he says, stepping into Xana's room. He stands over the body of a young woman clad in underwear and a hoodie, and she's dead hard. Guys, Hunter Johnson is saying to Officer Nunez, and I checked to see if she's breathing, and she's dead hard. Nunez sweeps the room with a beam of his flashlight, trains it on an adult male lying sprawled across a queen-size bed. The man's legs stick out from under a fawn-colored comforter, naked except for his socks. A blue blanket covers his torso and head. Quote, and I didn't check him yet, Hunter says, but I'm pretty sure he's 13, Nunez interrupts, speaking into his radio. I think we have a homicide. The shock of realization is obvious. Nunez pauses, trying to make sense of things. Furniture bloodied and violently displaced. Ethan in bed. Xana's legs splayed toward the door. Okay, get back, Nunez tells Johnson. The room is cluttered with items one might expect to find in a college student's bedroom, but they are scattered. Shoes, a coat hanger, a plate of food near a fan. There's laundry in a bin, a water bottle, a cell phone near Xana's left hand, French fries between her feet. The blood is on the walls, the door, the sheets, a nightstand, the floor. It's carnage. Quote, I don't know if they are still in here or not, Hunter says, walking back down the hallway toward the folding table set up for beer pong. I grab this knife. 1370, Nunez interrupts, turning back to the bedroom for a second look. This is the knife I grabbed. Okay, stay back there, please. Nunez seems somewhat overwhelmed, slow to process the gravity of the situation. Fuck. Which provides the perfect opportunity to pause for context. As a 2019 University of Idaho graduate himself, Nunez was no stranger to college life. And though he was only 25 years old with barely 2 years on the job, it would be hard to consider him a rookie. He had joined the police department in May of 2020 after 5 years volunteering with Moscow Fire Department, where he gained plenty of exposure to violence by misadventure. Just months earlier, on April 28, 2022, he received the Pullman, Washington Police Department's Meritorious Life-Saving Award for his efforts responding to a September 2021 shooting in the town's College Hill area. According to the citation and local reports, Officer Nunez provided immediate life-saving measures on 2 gunshot victims, one of whom died. Let's slow down are the next words we hear him speak. He has walked back through the living room to the top of the stairs leading down to the open front door. Officer Eric Warner has arrived as backup with no clue what he's walking into. Just come here, Nunez tells him. There's two. Looks like two fatalities. Nunez pulls on a pair of black nitrile gloves as the two officers return to the bedroom, where Nunez pauses for a deep breath, surveys the scene for the third time, and says again, fuck. He's trying to make sense of things that make no sense at all. You can hear it in his voice. Dude. Nunez focuses the beam of his flashlight on the bed as Warner looks in. I think he might have killed himself. How'd you get there? Warner asks. I don't know. I just see blood. I haven't. Nunez turns to his radio. 1370, he reports. For your information, there's two college-age people appearing both to be deceased. Lots of blood. Through the lens of his body camera, we see Warner pulling out his own black nitrile gloves. He seems almost unnaturally calm and collected, the consummate professional. Yeah, Nunez affirms, using police jargon to describe the two victims. They're DRT. Moscow Dispatch would know what DRT means, which is dead right there. But that is where clarity ends. From the moment Nunez makes his initial assessment, everything we think we know about this case starts to devolve. Despite all the countless reports and the interviews and laboratory analysis, the first moments of this investigation are captured Veritas style on 56 minutes of body cam. Before we continue, we need to look at why and how it seemed to be ignored. Whew. Okay. There's a lot in there. One, I have an obvious question, but before I address that, I just want to say welcome to Jeannie Ray for joining Hive Plus and Hot Girl Bummer 520. Thank you so much for the big super chat. Again, Germilla, you got your name still back there. Happy birthday to the Hive. It's our first 1 year birthday today, being the official 1 year day. And Hot Girl Bummer said, just because Birdie does story time like a boss. Well, I appreciate that, Hot Girl Bummer. I'm happy to do it and feel honored that the Hive is the opportunity to have Christopher Whitcomb, the author of this book, again, here tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central, 2-hour interview. And Blue Eyed Candy gifted a Hive Plus membership as well. Thank you to you all. Okay, so now let's go back to what I think everybody's considering, like, whoa, wait, what did he just say? Which is Nunez focuses the beam of his flashlight on the bed as Warner looks on, and Nunez states, I think he might have killed himself. Here's what sticks out to me about that. And I don't know, but I'm going off of just my initial reaction, and I'll share it with you all. If somebody committed suicide, I feel like the way that it would look for a police officer to say that would have to be rather specific, right? If you have, and I know he was covered up, but if he's covered up under the comforters and his feet are visible, you see Xana laying in the middle of the floor, but what would make him say, I think he might have killed himself? And I could be way off. I reserve that right to be completely wrong. You guys know I'm just sharing with you my live thoughts, but doesn't it seem like a body would have to look a certain way for somebody to say that they think it's a suicide? And that, thank you, Hot Girl Bummer. That's what I thought too right away. That whatever the cop saw by not being up close, most likely you would think it would look like a gunshot wound. Does that make sense? Because I don't think you would make an assumption if you've been brutally set. Like, they didn't say that about Xana. They didn't say that about Xana, seeing her sprawled out on the floor in a puddle of blood, but they did say it about Ethan. And Shannon said, yeah, and his socks are clean. Mrs. Bernie 2015 says, that is pretty crazy that he said that. What did he see in his hand besides hair that made him say that? Yeah, so there's hair. And then I think he committed suicide. So that was interesting. And Bus Diablo says, this is where they find out they're covering up a gun. It's not a bad take. Yeah. Why did he say that? Right? Why did he say that? Because knowing at least what we think we know. So again, long story or like a long take. I'll finish with this. I think that the body would have had to appear a certain way initially, whether it's the truth or not, but clearly Ethan looked a certain way that it looked like it was a suicide. Back to the book. On November 13th, 2022, Moscow police officer Mitchell Nunez had filed a report titled Supplemental 3, detailing the initial investigation at 1122 King Road. Prior to the release of body camera footage 3 years later, it was the origin story of all we know about the case. Nunez's report is here transcribed verbatim. On 11/13/2022 at approximately 11:56 hours, I responded to an unconscious subject at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Upon my arrival, I found a large gathering of people in the parking lot immediately north of 1122 King Road residence. 1122 King Road is a white 3-story single-family residence with multiple bedrooms. The 1122 designation is located directly above the front door facing north. I was directed to a bedroom on the second floor by Hunter I. Johnson in the northwest corner to locate unresponsive female. Upon entering the room, I observed a female laying supine on the floor next to a bed. According to Dylan M. Mortensen, this female was likely Kaylee Goncalves. Dylan also lived at 1122 King Road. I observed dried blood surrounding Kaylee's body and signs of cutting trauma to her face. Kaylee was covered in so much blood, I wasn't able to immediately discern where additional injuries would have likely been. Kaylee was apparently deceased due to her pale skin color, rigid body tone, and apparent blood loss. On the bed in the same room I observed Kaylee, I observed a male lying supine on the bed. According to Dylan, the male was likely Ethan J. Chapin. Dylan said Ethan was commonly at the residence. I observed blood covering portions of Ethan's legs, surrounding his body into the bed sheets, and drops of blood on the wall near Ethan's head. As I backed out of his room, Hunter showed me a kitchen knife and said he had it in his possession. I told Hunter to leave the knife and go back down the stairs to the front entrance. Officer Warner and I moved to visually clear the residence for any suspects or additional victims. On the third floor, Officer Warner and I found 2 additional apparently deceased females, both laying supine in a bed. This bedroom was on the southwest corner of the third floor. According to Dylan, these 2 females were likely Xana and Maddie. One female showed an apparent traumatic injury to her face due to the basic facial structure being unrecognizable. Both females showed very pale skin. Both females were covered in dried blood and apparently deceased. After the residence was deemed safe, Officer Warner and I exited the residence to secure it and the immediate area, to include the parking lot immediately to the north of the residence. I walked outside and began interviewing Dylan. Dylan told me at approximately 4 a.m. she heard a voice scream and believed it to be Kaylee's. Dylan said she heard Kaylee scream and announced there was somebody inside the residence. Dylan said she could hear Kaylee run from the third floor down the stairs to the second floor into the northwest bedroom. Dylan said she locked herself in the bedroom and continued to hear a commotion. Dylan said eventually she stopped hearing a struggle. And then heard a male voice say, "You're going to be fine. I'm going to help you." Dylan said she did not recognize the male's voice. Dylan said after a few minutes, she peeked out of her bedroom and observed a male described as approximately 6 feet tall, slim build with a black ski mask, leave the second floor patio area. This door was likely left open as it was found upon my arrival. I interviewed an additional roommate, Bethany Funk, who told me she was at the residence during the commotion. Bethany said she was on the second floor in the living area watching Vampire Diaries with Dylan and an additional person named Lakeland. Bethany said at approximately 2 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, Maddie and Kaylee came home from a night out at the Corner Club located at 202 North Main Street in Moscow, Idaho. Bethany said she also believed Madison and Kaylee went to the Grub Wandering Kitchen Truck that was commonly located in the 300 block of South Main Street. Bethany said she and Maddie let Maddie's dog out, Murphy, sometime between 2 and 2:30. Bethany said she went to bed around 2:30. Bethany said Madison came into her room sometime after 2:30 hours to ask if she knew where Murphy was. Bethany said she told Maddie no, and Maddie left. Bethany said she woke up in her bedroom, which was located on the first floor, to a sound as she described as a firecracker and a flash. Bethany said she initially thought the sound was a prank. According to Bethany's phone log, she showed me Bethany called Xana at 4:21, Ethan at 4:22, Maddie at 4:22, Maddie again at 4:30, and Kaylee at 4:31. Bethany said she never received an answer on each phone call. Bethany said she went back to sleep and woke up around 11:56 a.m. when 911 was called. Initially, I was told Kaylee was likely located on the second floor bedroom with Ethan. After comparing Dylan's initial statement with other investigations officers' observations, it appeared to actually be Xana that was located on the floor of that bedroom room, and Kaylee was one of the other females located in the third floor room. I was originally assigned to identify all of the people in the area. However, I was reassigned by Sergeant Gunderson to begin the search warrant application process. I provided the above information in the search warrant application. All right. Now, let me just take a sip of water and thank you. Oh, shoot. I'm out of water. I got to text Mrs. Birdie. 1 second. Thank you to everybody who sent in a super chat. I just saw Shell Shock said, happy birthday to the best people in the true crime world. Birdie and Mods, thank you for creating this wild, wonderful space for all of us. I always go back to the intro where it's like, welcome to the freak show, the best in town, because it really is. We do probably come off freakish being able to critically think and use our things called, or use the thing in our heads called our brains, which is not as common as one would think. And Jeep Girl, thank you for the super chat, said, Birdie, please allow me to call in. I want to say something. I had a call in last night, Jeep Girl, and I appreciate the super chat. I don't know if I'm going to open up the phone lines tomorrow, but after our interview tomorrow with Christopher Whitcomb, so that'll be on Thursday, expect there to be call-ins on Thursday or Friday this week. So stay tuned for that, and I will keep an eye out for your name, Jeep Girl, for sure. We'll make it happen. Now, Christopher Whitcomb goes on to describe what is known as the butterfly effect. I think that most people understand what that is. I won't read the whole story on it, but it really just comes down to like one small change can create a massive change over time. Now, he goes on to explain how one issue in his view, being Christopher Whitcomb saying this, one issue in my view is Nunez. As first officer on the scene, he recorded the initial condition of the scene in high resolution audio and video. But because paperwork is the bulwark of investigation, he also filed a written report, and there things seem to fall apart. Video proves that many of the statements he later made on paper were apparent contradiction to what was seen on the video. And because other steps were taken based on the paper report, these seeming mistakes may have been compounded as additional agencies joined the hunt. Just as the MIT mathematician predicted, small mistakes at the beginning can snowball into outcomes no one could have predicted. In order to make sense of things, one must compare what Nunez wrote with his video. One must compare what Nunez wrote with what his video shows. And though detailed how the hell do you say that word? Exegesis should start with the crime scene itself. Nunez's report begins with identification of the first victim, so we will start there as well. So, upon entering the room, I observed a female laying supine on the floor next to the bed, Nunez wrote in the second paragraph of his report. According to Dylan M. Mortensen, this female was likely Kaylee. Female, supine on the floor? Yes. Kaylee? No. The butterfly flaps its wings. We woke up last night at 4 a.m. are the first words of explanation Dylan actually offers. Nunez's camera captures her talking to Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, Jack DeCore, as he arrives at the house. It seems clear that she wants Nunez to hear her because she looks right at him. It's a great point by Chris Whitcomb there. In the main room, pretty much in the main room, and I heard them dancing and laughing. Kaylee went upstairs and she screamed because someone's in the room, and she ran down the stairs, and I kept calling her name, but she wouldn't answer. And then I saw the guy, and I just locked the door, and I ran downstairs to Bethany. We don't know what's going on. Those who have followed this case will immediately realize this is not part of the prosecution's narrative. What Mortensen actually said and what Nunez wrote down differ in many or immaterial ways. Her timeline, physical description, interaction with the suspect, and other recollections sound clear on tape, but devolve like a game of telephone as events unfold. Can you come over here with me, please? Nunez asks Mortensen at 12:10. They step toward MPD 5 as Jack DeCower obviously talks with Bethany Funk near an overflowing dumpster. Mortensen, who has facilitated between hysteria and relative calm, stands barefoot while Nunez retrieves a clipboard and some standardized form. Okay, how much have you seen in there? Nunez asks after a painfully long delay. Instead of gathering time-critical facts, he spends the first 7 minutes on administrative questions about names, date of birth, and phone numbers. The clock is ticking, but he seems distracted. Thank you. I don't really know, Dylan tells him. I just saw my friend laying like that when I called Hunter because we were so scared. We were like, Hunter, can you please come help us? That's all I saw because Hunter told us not to go in there. Who is Hunter? Nunez does not document in his written report that Dylan said she actually saw Xana's body, apparently prior to calling Hunter. This apparent oversight would prove crucial. That man right there, she says, pointing towards the house, that helped show you around. Cars drive by, visitors arrive, people huddle under blankets, weeping. So Hunter did go in there. Yeah, and that's when he told us, you need to call the cops right now, and we did. Jack DeCoeur steps in with a question, but is told to wait, and then Nunez says, okay, now I overheard you talking about last night. Yeah. Okay, you don't have to. The more we know right now, the better, but we got to start this process. Somebody will probably be revisiting this interview with you very soon. Yep, that's fine. So you're probably going to have to retell this story quite a bit. That's fine. Like reading it on paper. And again, I know we've looked at this and we've listened and we've seen the reports, but when it's written in a book, it just hits a little bit different. Is anybody else feeling like that? How weird is it? Yeah. All this administrative questions on names, birthdays, all this stuff. The clock is ticking. And now it's like, you're going to have to retell this quite a bit. Okay. What do you remember seeing? What started? I remember I was in my room and I was trying to go to bed and I heard Kaylee, Jack's ex-girlfriend, who has a dog, Murphy. Nunez clarifies that Jack is Jack DeCower, the man standing a few feet away, then follows with questions that seem to have little to do with the murders. He verifies things like parents' names and the location of Mortensen's room before getting down to the details of what she witnessed. These are our first witness statements about the crimes. Dylan's exact words matter. They are quoted directly from the police report. All I heard her going upstairs and go, okay, I'm going to go to sleep right now because she's going upstairs. Heard who go upstairs? Kaylee and the dog Murphy. And upstairs to the very top. Yeah, that's where her room is. Okay. And then also I heard her walking up. I heard her scream and she ran downstairs because she saw someone. That's when I'm pretty sure she said, someone's here. And she screamed and just ran downstairs and I called her name, but I jumped up and locked my door because I was so scared. And then I heard someone in the bathroom. I heard her crying and I heard some guy say that you're going to be okay. I'm going to help you. And I kept calling her name, but she wasn't answering. And then I opened up for a second and I saw this guy and he was not insanely tall, but he was wearing all black and like a mask that was covering his forehead and his mouth. And then I locked the door and I called Bethany and I didn't know what to do. That was at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. Yes. And so I ran down. You left here. Yeah. I left my room down to Bethany's room, but she's that one. Mortensen points at the house, the one with the white shades at the bottom. I ran down there and we talked and we just locked the door and we didn't think anything of it. We're like, nothing happens in Moscow. We just tried to go to bed and we woke up and it was weird because none of our roommates were up and we called them all. We called all of them and they were not waking up. And me and Bethany were like, this is weird. So I called Emily and Hunter to come over and that's when all this happened. Jesus. Instead of asking for clarifications of seemingly contradictory statements, such as Mortensen expressing terror over an incident involving a masked intruder and a screaming roommate, followed by, we didn't think anything of it, he moves on to ephemera, whatever that is. There's a couple words that I don't know, and I apologize in advance. Who all lives here with you? Mortensen names all 4 victims and describes exactly where they sleep, providing direct contrast to what Nunez later wrote in his report. Nunez even pauses to verify that Xana Kernodle is the woman on the second floor besides Ethan, who is not a roommate but visits often. He takes written notes, pausing to check on spelling and other details. All right, describe the guy that you saw. I don't think he was a little bit taller than me, and I couldn't really see much of him, but I'm almost positive he was wearing a full black outfit, and he had this mask that was just over his forehead and over his mouth, and he didn't say anything to me, like, at all. And I just shut the door and locked it because I didn't know what to do. And I think he went out the side door, the sliding door in the kitchen that goes out to the backyard. And then I didn't know anything else, so I called Bethany, and I was like, I just need to come downstairs because I don't know where anyone else is. And I called Maddie, I called Xana, I called Kaylee. No one would answer except Bethany. Okay, Nunez says, as Mortensen appears to break down emotionally. It's worth noting, this is crazy. This is so crazy. It's worth noting in 21 minutes of recorded crying, as seen on the video, it does not seem to me that Mortensen shed a single actual tear. Damn. Now, I believe he's seeing the unredacted footage. So it's worth noting that in 21 minutes of recorded crying, as seen on the video, it does not seem to me that Mortensen shed a single actual tear. You're doing great, Nunez tells Dylan at one point. I'm scared. It's all right. I'm asking a lot of you, he responds. He does not ask why she's scared now with police on scene after waiting almost 8 hours before calling 911. Yes, she may have just seen Xana on the floor, but she saw the same thing at 4:20 a.m. also. Okay, let's go back. I just want to make sure we're getting everything. So you're sure it was at 4 in the morning? Yes, it was 4:10. You first noticed a guy. Well, I first heard Kaylee go upstairs and scream and run downstairs. So 4 this morning, Kaylee went upstairs to the way top. Yes, to her room with Murphy, the dog. Okay, and then you heard Kaylee scream. I heard her scream and run as fast as she could downstairs, and she said, someone's here. She ran downstairs, Nunez asks, taking copious notes. Yes, I could hear. You can hear everything. And I'm sure I heard her run downstairs really fast, and then I heard Murphy barking a lot. Dylan's bed on the second floor is directly beneath Mogan's on the third. The stairway where she heard Kaylee running abuts her wall. We will return to this later. And then I heard her go into, I think it was the bathroom, and I remember her sobbing, and I just remember hearing this guy's voice, and I didn't recognize it, saying, you're going to be okay, I'm going to help you, but it wasn't in a good way. It wasn't like, I don't know how to explain it, like it wasn't in a nice way, it was in a weird way, with a weird tone. The spot where Dylan Mortensen stood in her bedroom was 2 doors and approximately 27 feet away from the only bathroom on the second floor. Perhaps Nunez is not yet familiar enough with the house to question how she could have heard a woman sobbing or assessed the intruder's tone within those constraints. So crazy, so true. Nunez confirms that she reports the man said, you're going to be okay. I'm going to help you. Yeah. And you didn't hear anything from Kaylee anymore at that point. No, I didn't hear anything. So then I kept calling her name. I called on my phone. I called Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee. None of them answered. So I opened up my door to look, and that's when I saw the guy pass by. He looked at me, but he didn't come toward me or say anything, which seemed confusing to me, and I don't understand that. And then I'm pretty sure he went out the side door. And then I called Bethany. She said she thought maybe there was a fire or like fireworks. We didn't know. She heard this loud noise and a light, I guess. What would you all be saying if you were the police officer on scene? The lack of detail, and I'm not trying to be funny or rude, but I'd be like, are you on bath salts right now? What do you mean? A fire, a firework, a firecracker? You see your roommate laying on the ground. I just saw what she looked like. She's covered in blood. You don't do anything. You wait 8 hours to call 911, and then you look the guy in the eye, and you're pretty sure that he just left, and you're still scared now? What is going on? I don't know how the alarm bells in this officer's head, I mean, I have my suspicions, but it's incredible to me. Did you hear like a pop or a bang? Mortensen turns toward Bethany for clarification, but Nunez brings her back. What you heard? I didn't hear that. Silver sedan comes up the street, and Nunez interrupts the already disjointed interview to ask the driver where he's going. When he returns to Mortensen, she seems to be searching for reference. I don't think I ever heard a bang, she says. I didn't think anything about fire or fireworks. And since I called her, I don't think I heard any of that. But I was also in and out of it because I was so scared. And I was really tired. That's when I called Bethany and I told her, I need to come to your room because she was the only one who was answering me. So I ran down there. And for a second, I stopped and I saw Xana passed out. And I thought maybe she was just sleeping or something. And I think because I was so out of it, I went into Bethany's room and we just fell asleep. And then we woke up this morning and no one was waking up at all. I mean, like no one was answering, which was really weird because all of us woke up around like 9 or 10. And then I called Emily, who brought Hunter to come check. Viewing the tape, I wondered why she would ask a female friend for help instead of calling 911. Nunez does not ask, perhaps more confusing. He does not ask Dylan how she decided the woman he had just seen butchered on the second floor could possibly have been mistaken as sleeping. Jesus. Hunter came here first and I told him what happened. And actually, I'm going to pause right there. Guys, I'd said it a little bit ago, but we've seen this on the body cam. We've read it in the documents. I really like the perspective of knowing that this is in a book. I feel like it gives us a different sort of viewpoint and a lens to look through. As far as we've known it was crazy, this is like the craziest version to me, reading it in the book. I mean, this is almost more crazy and powerfully weird than the documents. And that was already at a super high level. It's just crazy. And I'm so excited again to talk to Chris tomorrow, the author of this book, 7 p.m. Please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe, and I will get back to the book now. Hunter came here first, and I told him what happened. And then he looked in the bedroom and said, you need to get out. Call the cops. Okay, the guy that you saw, I know it was dark, right? Or were the lights on? I think the lights were on in the house. I don't really know what he looked like because he had a mask, but he wasn't super tall. How tall are you? I'm 5'10". I think maybe he was my height, an inch or two higher or lower. I can't remember. So about 6 foot. I think so, around there. Okay, how was he built? Fat, skinny, stocky? More like skinny, but basketball player skinny. But not too skinny, but almost fit skinny in a way. That's what I think. I don't know for sure. Okay, and then the voice. You said when he said those words, you didn't recognize that voice before? I didn't recognize him or his voice. I mean, I also couldn't see him, but I didn't recognize that voice at all. It didn't even cross my mind who that could be. I mean, I also couldn't see him. Did you guys have a party last night too? Or not tonight, but there was a Sigma Chi party and we had like a formal thing beforehand. That was 2 days ago. Okay. Is there anything that popped out about that event? Anything that was concerning? No. I mean, I went to Sigma Chi because Ethan, he is a Sigma Chi, and Xana and him are dating, and Xana went there. I was there for a little bit, and then I went to my friend Allie's house down the street, and then I came back home with my friend Lake and Bethany. Everything was fine. Nothing weird at all. Nothing suspicious until 4 a.m. A red sedan passes on the street as Nunez turns towards Bethany Funk and a group of friends huddled under blankets near the dumpster. Okay, all right. I don't think I have any questions for you right now. Somebody else will be talking to you, so let's grab that. He points to the blanket she is standing on. Let's go back over there. With that, he moves to the first interview with Bethany Funk. Before we go there, we need to acknowledge the apparent differences between what police body cameras recorded and what is written in reports. If we want to determine when the butterfly wings started gathering momentum, we need to go back inside the house and start matching Dylan's account with what police actually found. As we will soon discover, there seems to be a wide gap between what the prosecution claims and what the evidence shows. Prosecutor Bill Thompson's narrative and defense attorney Ann Taylor's defense do not seem to be based on the same set of facts. So that's chapter 1. Pretty nuts. Now, I'm going to read a little bit of chapter 2 here, okay? Again, the goal in doing this with Chris on the show tomorrow, the author of the book, I want people that, if you haven't read anything, I want you to get kind of the vibe of how this is written so you'll understand the questions that I'm asking him tomorrow, and you guys will be able to ask your own questions as well. Okay. So chapter 2 is titled Vandals, Football, Ring Cam Device, and Pi Phi Formal. Think about all the times you have gathered with friends and family around a dinner table to reminisce over important moments you have shared in life. Maybe it's a graduation or a wedding or a birthday, some event that starts out with everyone in general agreement, only to suddenly turn sour. Invariably, someone mentions a detail about what they heard or felt or saw, and somebody else disagrees. Before you know it, the rest of the conversation descends into differences of opinion. It's not until someone brings out a photograph or a video that everybody starts to laugh about how often human beings get things wrong. Crime scenes are no different. Victims forget, witnesses fail, cops falter. Fortunately for us, Nunez's body cam footage tells an incorruptible story. No matter what he typed in his report, we can now go back and re-examine the differences between what the evidence shows and what seems to have gotten lost in translation. I think he might have killed himself might be a great place to start. Oof. That the first time that I read that gave me chills. Gave me absolute chills that Chris Whitcomb is deciding to start at Nunez on his body cam, which we originally were never able to hear. He lets us in on the fact that when it's blacked out on the camera and muted, Officer Nunez says, I think he might have killed himself. And he's choosing to start there. This is the point in the investigation where Nunez, an EMT with experience in violent injury, calls out cause of death without getting within 5 feet of the victims. Nunez never checks Ethan for vital signs, never bends down to examine Xana. How'd you get there? Officer Werner asks. It's a legitimate question. I don't know. I just see blood. I haven't. And though some might consider Nunez's assumptions understandable under the circumstances, it is important to note that assumptions could lead to bias. Bias leads to speculation. Speculation leads to confirmation. And confirmation bias is the enemy of truth. Wow, that is really, really well written. Yes, 22 MO 9903 would eventually become a detailed examination of means, motive, and modus operandi. But there is no escaping the fact that this started with conjecture. When prosecutor Bill Thompson handed Kohberger's legal team their mountain of forensic analysis, it did not mention that Ethan Chapin, one of the first victims, was initially thought to be a suspect. Are you serious? That is so insane to me. Officer Nunez advised the female and a male in the bedroom had blood on them and appeared to be beyond help. Warner noted in his initial report he made no mention of Ethan dying by suicide, nor anything else about the horrific scene in Xana's room. His report provides no details whatsoever before moving back toward the living room. I walked out of the bedroom toward Johnson and saw a clean steak knife on a beer pong table. This, of course, begs discussion of an apparent second critical misstep in the early moments of the investigation. In a quadruple homicide where casual observation suggests death by stabbing, the knife on the beer pong table might be considered important. When Hunter first mentioned the knife, police had not cleared the house for suspects, had not even discovered Mogan and Goncalves on the third floor. They had not checked to find the kitchen door open, had no idea who might or might not still be there. To disregard an edged weapon in plain view of two hacked up bodies seems difficult to understand, especially watching the video. Warner wrote in the police report, Johnson said he got the steak knife from the kitchen because he arrived and saw the female on the bedroom floor covered in blood and did not know if there was anyone else present in the room. Johnson said he checked the room with the knife for protection. Nunez's body camera does record Hunter mentioning the knife as the two men leave Xana's room, but Nunez seems not to have heard him. Based on what appears to be the sound of the knife hitting the table, Hunter dropped it after Nunez discovered Xana and Ethan, but before he talked to Warner. If Hunter told Warner about the knife, it's not recorded on the tape. This is a problem because the origin of the steak knife and the manner in which it was found are never properly explained. Despite discovery of the K-bar sheath on the 3rd floor, we should recall that even the prosecution admitted in the plea appearance that no murder weapon has ever been identified, recovered, or named. Autopsy photographs suggest at least 3 different edged weapons, guys. Autopsy photographs suggest at least 3 different edged weapons were used in the 4 murders. And despite all of the hype, no laboratory findings prove that a K-bar knife was one of them. Even if Hunter did grab the knife from the kitchen for self-defense, police should have treated it with suspicion. Nunez's report makes it clear that he did not. As I backed out of this room, Hunter showed me a kitchen knife and said he had it in his possession. I told Hunter to leave the knife and go back downstairs to the front entrance. Body cam footage also shows this statement seems to be false. Nunez never mentions the knife, does not secure it, does not seem to acknowledge it in any way. This will prove important later in the day when an Idaho State Police lab team responds to process the MPD warrant. Here we add another report, one written by ISP Detective Jeffrey Talbot. On November 13th, 2022, at about 12:22 p.m., the MPD requested ISP District 2 investigations to assist with multiple homicides at 1122 King Road. I was assigned as the lead crime scene investigator. It is important to note that Detective Talbot did not file this report until December 6th, 3 weeks after the search. As the person responsible for logging, handling, securing, and establishing chain of custody for all evidence that first day, it would seem as if Talbot should have built a solid procedural foundation under the items he seized, including the K-bar knife sheath. That would become a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Looking back, it seems odd that no one questioned the timing or veracity of his recollections, especially the defense. 3 weeks is a long time, and as we will soon see, any mistakes he might have made that first day could prove catastrophic down the line. In the same supplemental, Talbot wrote, as you go up the stairs to the 2nd floor, you enter a small living room area. There was a folding table set up on the west side of the area, partially blocking the entry to the west hallway. The table had multiple red solo cups on it in game formation, beer pong, along with a small steak knife. There were multiple areas of red liquid on the table that appeared to be blood. Imagine finding a knife directly on top of what is reported to be liquid blood left in the commission of 4 edged weapon murders in a heavily trafficked room. Now imagine that the detective in charge of the search does not condone, segregate, or secure it. Finally, imagine that crime scene photos, laboratory analysis, and independent blood spatter treatments clearly show there was no liquid found anywhere on the white folding table, not even in the cups. Stains beneath and around the steak knife were dry and so faint they do not appear in the body camera footage. Lab experts later determined that actual bloodstains had been diluted with an unknown substance and were wiped or altered to the point where it was impossible to identify their source. There is more. Talbot continued in the 7-page document. At about 5 p.m. after a search warrant was signed, Sergeant Blaker, Detective Payne, Latah County Prosecuting Attorney Bill Thompson, and Ashley Jennings and I entered the scene and conducted a walkthrough. According to this timeline, a formal crime scene analysis did not begin until 5 hours after Nunez arrived. At that point, police logs and video indicate that more than a dozen people had seemingly walked through the house without adhering to the most basic anti-contamination protocols. Every law enforcement academy and criminology program in the world preaches that it is impossible to enter a crime scene without tracking contaminants in and evidence out. The fact that police wore nitrile gloves makes little difference. because gloves protect the officers from blood and other potentially toxic substances, but they do not prevent cross-contamination. Transference is exactly the same, whether from skin or a thin barrier of latex. Talbot continued. At about 7:05 p.m., Detective Powell, Detective Schwecke, and I started marking the evidence with numbered play cards. I can never say that. I'll just say numbered cards. While Detective Roberts photographed the exhibits, according to this statement, the ISP did not commence their formal search until almost 15 hours after the crimes occurred. During this time, Dylan Mortensen, Bethany Funk, Hunter Johnson, Emily Allant, and others are known to have moved through the house with little or no documentation. Although this did not defy any apparent police orders and it was their home, to date, any possible intentional or unintentional alterations of the crime scene have never been fully explained. In thousands of reports, interpersonal dynamics are barely mentioned. More on that later. For now, it is important to focus on Talbot's work. He wrote on page 5 of his report, the following evidence was recorded and or collected. Steak knife located on folding table in living room. The knife is labeled Exhibit 22 among 55 separate items. And before dismissing it as irrelevant to the outcome of this case, we need to consider Talbot's treatment of other potential weapons. He is the one, after all, who documented and entered into evidence the infamous K-bar sheath. Though prosecutors would rely upon DNA found on a thumb snap, Talbot's chain of custody log would seemingly turn out to be shockingly flawed. To fully understand how, we need to consider that chain of custody is a foundation of evidentiary procedure. Every exhibit introduced at trial must come attached to a detailed provenance log that shows where the item was found, who touched it, where it was kept, each time it changed hands. When considering DNA found on the knife sheath, 2 details beg early mention. The first involves origin. Though Talbot's December 6th report glosses over discovery, statements by both Nunez and Warner send up alarms. Placards. Thank you, Dustin Miller. Placards. Commit that to memory. On the 3rd floor in the southeast bedroom, I saw 2 clothed females laying on a bed. This is Warner's report now on November 13th. On the 3rd floor in the southeast bedroom, I saw 2 clothed females laying on a bed on their backs who appeared deceased. One female on the left side of the bed in relation to the bedroom door had an extreme amount of lacerations to her face and upper body, which made her unrecognizable. It's sad. The other female had multiple lacerations on her upper body and some blood on her face. I walked to the far side of the bed to determine if the female on the right was beyond help. I saw the female's leg was off the edge of the bed and it had lividity. Once I noticed the lividity in the female's legs, I backed out of the room. Oddly enough, Nunez's body cam records Warner standing no more than 18 inches from Mogan's lifeless body, shining his flashlight on the bed. Now, remember, this was all blacked out for us. So he's 18 inches from Mogan's lifeless body, and he's shining his flashlight on the bed, the victim's, and specifically Mogan's leg, where it extends out from under a comforter. This is the area where prosecutors allege the K-bar sheath was found, yet neither Warner nor Nunez mentioned the sheath in their reports. In fact, Nunez returns to the bedroom after Warner has gone downstairs and shines his own flashlight directly where crime scene photographs later show the sheath to have been found. A frame-by-frame analysis of the video, widely available online, shows there's no K-bar sheath where the prosecution claims. Jesus H. Perhaps this could be dismissed as a misleading camera angle or administrative oversight. But what turns up next really starts to feel like a problem. Though Detective Talbot made no mention of it in his December 6th report, he had already composed and logged a separate handwritten inventory, contemporaneous to the search. On November 13th, 2022, he filed a 4-page evidence property receipt documenting what he discovered and seized at the house. This is the form he filled out with a pen as he was bagging and tagging items seized pursuant to the MPD's warrant. Unlike the December 6th supplemental, this form was completed at the scene. Talbot's November 13th inventory lists dozens of items from foot casts on the ground, northwest of residence, fingerprints lifted from the kitchen to victim number 1, female, second floor, bedroom, meaning Xana, and victim number 2, Ethan, male, bed, second floor, later identified as Ethan. Each item is listed according to where it was found. It isn't until page 2 of the report that the butterfly wings really start to beat. According to his hand, guys, okay. What's the word I'm looking for? The magnitude of what I'm about to read next should send shockwaves through every mainstream media source that ever reported on this case. And I really hope that they pull their heads out of their ass and they start to report on this, because this is a bombshell. It isn't until we get to page 2 of the report that the butterfly wings really start to beat. According to his handwritten receipt, the location of where he found Exhibit 14, the foundation of the prosecution's case, is not what we've been led to believe. Knife, K-bar, sheath, Talbot wrote, on floor next to victim 3. On floor next to victim 3. Though never previously disclosed, Detective Talbot here drops a bomb on the prosecution's narrative. If Talbot's handwritten inventory is correct and the sheath was found on the floor, prosecutor Bill Thompson has problems. His Brady disclosure, wherein he handed over every detail, should have handed Kohberger's defense a whole new treasure chest of reasonable doubt. How is it that the Idaho State Police's lead forensic investigator could write that he found a sheath on the floor, only to later document that it was found in the bed? Was it moved? If so, when was it moved? What does the ISP chain of custody sheet show? Why did Talbot not file his report until 3 weeks after the search? Where is the state's explanation of seemingly glaring inconsistencies? The list goes on and on. And to be clear, this is the K-bar knife sheath used as the cornerstone of the state's of Idaho's case. This is where laboratory examiners claim to have found DNA on a thumb snap tying Kohberger to the scene. This is the sheath he supposedly dropped in the bed while murdering Kaylee and Maddie. This is the sheath detectives claim they found lodged beneath Mogan's thigh. And here is where even the most casual sleuth might ask how a seeming mistake this outrageous could be possible. How could the prosecution's case begin with a handwritten chain of custody that seems irreparably broken? How could defense attorney Ann Taylor have seemingly ignored this? Did she miss it? The only way to answer those questions is return to the initial condition of the crime scene itself. We need to understand that Talbot was not the first outsider to enter the house. It was not even Nunez or Warner. It was Hunter Johnson. Dun, dun, dun. If we want to get to the bottom of what really happened at 1122 King Road, that horrible night in November, we need to look at what Hunter told police. Despite what you think you know about this case, the storm Lawrence predicted from butterflies flapping their wings is yet barely a whisper. Let me just take a sip of water. Sorry. Guys, please hit that like button again. And let's drop some God damn it, Jeff emojis in the chat. I mean, this is very well written. And so far, I hope you guys are as impressed with this book as far as we're really getting an insight into the unredacted stuff and these reports. It feels very validating to know that we're not crazy about that damn sheath and about what happened. I will continue in the book here. On November 28th, 2 weeks after the murders, MPD officer Lawrence Mowry filed supplemental 42 for results of interviews conducted at 1122 King Road. It is here transcribed verbatim. Now remember, all of the bleeps and the muted parts we now get access to in this report. Hunter said around noon on November 13th, Dylan called Emily, which is his girlfriend. Dylan told Emily she thought something was not right in her house. Dylan also told Emily she heard or saw a man in her house the night prior. Dylan asked Emily and Hunter to come over and make sure everything was okay because she locked herself in Bethany's room. Hunter said he was the first person to get to the residence. Hunter said he entered the code to the front door where Bethany and Dylan were in Bethany's room on the first floor. Dylan and Bethany were telling Hunter they did not know what was going on. Hunter said he went up the stairs and immediately went into Xana's room. Hunter said this was the only room he went into. Hunter said when he approached the door, it was only partially open. Hunter said when he opened it, he saw Xana and Ethan. Hunter said he initially did not realize all the blood was dried blood in the room. Hunter said he thought at first they'd been drunk and left a mess. Jesus H. Christ. Hunter said when he stood there for a moment, he began to realize what he was seeing. Hunter said Bethany and Dylan were uncontrollably crying. Hunter said he told them to get out of the house and called law enforcement. Hunter said that he went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife from the drawer. Hunter said that he went down in the room and checked the closet, or then he went into the room and checked the closet to make sure there was not anyone else in the room. Hunter said he checked for a pulse on both Xana and Ethan. Hunter said both of the bodies had rigor mortis and were cold with no breath or pulse. That's a little bit weird. Hunter Johnson is referring to rigor mortis and that they were cold. That part's not weird, but rigor mortis with no breath or pulse. Hunter said he believed the two had been dead for a while. Hunter said he believed the two had been dead for a while. Hunter said he believed he left the knife on the folding table in the living room. Hunter said Emily, Josie, and Lyndon started to enter the house and come up the stairs. Hunter told them to get out of the residence. Hunter said this was about the time MPD arrived on scene. Hunter said the officer told him to stay where he was at. Hunter said he did not know if anyone else was upstairs, as he had not gone anywhere else in the house. Hunter said he had trouble comprehending what he was seeing. Hunter said he was not at the Sigma Chi party the night prior. Hunter said he and Ethan were texting the night prior by phone. Hunter said Ethan wanted him to come over, but Hunter chose not to. Excuse me. Hunter said he knew Ethan since fall of 2021. Hunter said he was in Phi Delta Theta, and Ethan was a member of Sigma Chi. Hunter indicated Josie and Emily were in the same sorority and were roommates. Hunter said Lyndon was also present in the fraternity Delta Tau Delta and was currently dating Josie. Hunter said he and Lyndon stayed at Josie's apartment with Emily and Josie the night of the 12th. Hunter was asked when the last time he was at 1122 King Road was. Hunter indicated he was last at the residence on the 12th, where he was pre-gaming for the Vandals football game. Hunter said he got to the residence around noon or 1 and left at about 2:30 to go to a different party. Hunter said the last time Emily was at King Road was Friday the 11th. Hunter did not know of anyone who had issues with Ethan and Xana dating. Hunter estimated Xana and Ethan were dating for 8 months, and he also said he knew Xana very well through his girlfriend, Emily. Hunter said he was not very familiar with Maddie or Kaylee. Hunter allowed pictures to be taken of his phone and the conversations between him and Ethan. To begin unraveling clues left inside the house, we need to establish the last moment when the crime scene was still intact. Every homicide detective will tell you there is no way to build a case when you don't trust the evidence. And there is no trust in evidence that has been corrupted. A smoking gun is worthless if you can't prove who left it. Common sense would suggest that our timeline begins when the crimes occurred. This would be approximately 4:15 a.m., according to the prosecution, just about when Dylan Mortensen claims she first heard Kaylee run down the stairs. This would correlate with what we are believed to be screams recorded on a ring cam device at 1112 King Road. It fits cell and social media communications from women inside the house. It conforms with general facts of the case as provided by a DoorDash driver named Molly McMichael, witness statements, and a neighborhood reports of an aggressively barking dog. The problem with establishing the initial condition of the crime scene is that there were survivors. Despite numerous interviews with Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen, police never fully established where the two women went or what they did between 4 a.m. and noon. Though Dylan claimed to have left her room after spotting the intruder. Guys, I forgot about this part. Listen to this. This is insane. Okay? This is insane. I'll go back up. Though Dylan claimed to have left her room after spotting the intruder, evidence appears to suggest that may not have been the case. Police files indicate that an Apple Watch she wore that night documented movements that are very hard to explain. Holy shit. Before we get to Dylan, it makes sense to revisit Hunter. According to Mowry, he was the first person to enter the residence after the crimes. Hunter told police he entered through the locked front door using a punch code to gain access before finding Bethany and Dylan in Bethany's room. This will become important once police receive an eyewitness account that the front door was open prior to Hunter's arrival. On November 17th, MPD Officer Aaron Morris filed Supplemental 20 detailing information provided by a neighbor named Justin Nadeau. It reads, Nadeau stated on Sunday, November 13th, between 9 and 10 in the morning, he was walking his dog. He stated when he walked by the first time, the front door to King Road on the north side of the building facing campus was wide open. He stated he knew it was a party house, so he assumed someone was too intoxicated and forgot to close the door the night prior. Nadeau stated he walked his dog up Taylor Avenue to Blake Avenue and then down Sweet Avenue. He said the walk took him about an hour. Nadeau stated when he walked back to his apartment around 11, the front door was still wide open. If the two survivors never left Bethany's room, who closed and locked the door? More on that shortly. What first begs inquiry is apparent inconsistencies introduced by Hunter's story. He told Mowry that Xana's room was the only one he entered, though he told Nunez and Warner he went into the kitchen to retrieve a knife. He said the door to Xana's room was partially open when he approached, but that directly contradicts Dylan's statement that she saw Xana lying on the floor as she went downstairs. Hunter said Bethany and Dylan were uncontrollably crying when he told them to get out of the house, implying that they may have gone up to the second floor with him. Hunter's statement is further complicated by the fact he told Mowry his girlfriend, Emily, started to enter the house with Lyndon, later identified as Lyndon Beck, and Josie, and told them to get out. If this is true, it brings to 6 the number of people who may have tracked evidence into or out of the house before Nunez arrived. Perhaps most interesting to crime scene analysts is Hunter's statement that he checked for a pulse on both Xana and Ethan upon entering the room. If true, this means his initial statements to Nunez may have been false. He told Mowry both of the bodies had rigor mortis and were cold with no breath or pulse, an assessment that seems unusual for a 20-year-old college student with no medical training. Yeah, no kidding. Rigor mortis. According to Mowry, Hunter said 2 victims had been deceased for a while. If these contradictions do not seem confusing enough, Mowry's subsequent interviews of other witnesses will prove baffling. We know, for example, that Bethany Funk called Whitcomb 911, standing outside the open front door with Dylan Mortensen. We see, again, it says Bethany. We know from Hunter Johnson's preceding transcribed interview with Officer Mowry that his girlfriend, Emily Allant, was the calm voice who took the phone from Bethany to speak with 911 operator Calvin. What we did not previously know is that another student, Jenna McClure, was there also. Before further analyzing Hunter's statements, it makes sense to consider what Jenna told Mowry. Together, they provide the clearest picture yet of what the house looked like before the police arrived. As Mowry reported on November 13th in Latah County Prosecuting Attorney, Supplemental 42, Jenna said she texted Bethany at 11:20 in the morning. Jenna asked Bethany if she was awake. Jenna said Bethany called her back at 11:49 a.m. Bethany told Jenna she and Dylan were in Bethany's room. Jenna said Bethany was freaked out because her roommates were not answering the phone. Mowry's report indicates that Jenna was already en route to the house when Bethany called back, but does not indicate why. Jenna said she heard Dylan on the phone in the background saying, "I saw something." Jenna said Bethany asked her to come over to 1122 King Road and pick her up. Despite a lack of detail, Mowry's report establishes several critical considerations. First, It shows that Bethany wanted Jenna to drive over to King Road and pick her up, indicating a sense that something was wrong. Whatever Bethany thought about events of the previous 8 hours, she called 3 friends before calling 911. Second, though forensics would later provide a foundation of physical evidence, police initially had no idea who might have murdered 4 co-eds with a knife or why. In order to gain a better understanding of events leading up to the murders, they needed to evaluate the possibility of a broader threat to the community. They needed background on the victims, needed to know who might want them dead. McClure had answers. She started establishing chronological order of campus events the night before. Jenna said she did not go to Sigma Chi, but went to a different one instead. Jenna said Bethany and Dylan came to this other party after she left Sigma Chi. Jenna estimated Dylan left her party at around 12:30 a.m. and Bethany left her party around 1 a.m. on the 13th. Mowry clarified that Jenna was a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority with Dylan, Lakeland, Bethany, Xana, Maddie, and although Xana and Maddie had dropped out, he determined that Kaylee was a member of the Alpha Phi sorority, but had dropped out as well. Though no one knew it at the time, sorority affiliation would prove important down the line. Once investigators learned that Kaylee had moved away from Moscow, but returned for the weekend primarily to attend Pi Beta Phi formal as Dylan's +1. Documenting suspicious activity leading up to the murders, Mowry wrote, Jenna said she knew Kaylee saw a dark figure staring at her from the tree line when she took her dog Murphy out to pee. Jenna said this occurred about a month ago at King Road. Jenna said there's been lighthearted talk and jokes made about a stalker in the past. Though Mowry does not go further into detail about the stalker, he does extend his investigation to one last interview of Lyndon Beck, not widely known within the context of this investigation. Beck provided valuable insights, as Mowry wrote in his report. Lyndon said Dylan had called Emily around 10 p.m. Would that be 10 a.m.? 10 a.m. and sounded scared. So Lyndon said Dylan called Emily around 10 a.m. and sounded scared. Lyndon said Dylan told Emily someone had been in her house last night. Lyndon said Dylan and Bethany ran downstairs and locked themselves in the room. So according to Lyndon Beck, he had stayed at his girlfriend's apartment on Taylor Avenue Saturday night. Emily Allant and Hunter Johnson were there as well. He said Allant and Johnson came into the room where he was staying sometime before noon that Sunday. Lyndon said Dylan informed them she did this because of her seeing someone in the house and Dylan could only see his nose and his chin. Lyndon said Dylan was freaking out and wanting them to come over to King Road. Though no one knew it at the time, Dylan calling Emily at 10 o'clock Sunday morning provides the first apparent contradiction in her story. She had told police she fell asleep with Bethany and did not wake up until shortly before calling 911. As Mowry reported, Lyndon said he walked with Emily, Josie, to 1122 King Road from Josie's apartment on Taylor Ave. Lyndon said Dylan and Bethany walked out of the house crying. Lyndon said Hunter arrived at the residence first because he left before them. Lyndon said he went to the downstairs door and Hunter told him not to come up the stairs. Which brings us to the scene Officer Nunez's body camera recorded as he walked toward the house that Sunday. Based on interviews conducted on scene and in subsequent days, we can establish that the people standing outside included Lyndon Beck, Hunter Johnson, Bethany Funk, Dylan Mortensen, Josie Latorin, and Emily Allant. Before we re-enter the house to start our forensic look at what police found, it is important to discuss one final report, Supplemental 7, in a statement investigation filed by Officer John Lawrence. Though the 2-page document provides a considerable amount of information, its greatest value at this point is that it records the names, ranks, and affiliations of law enforcement personnel at the scene. Okay, so we know, I'm not going to read that part, but I'm going to go on to what Christopher Whitcomb comments on it. What stands out is the speed with which Moscow police sought help from outside agencies. This might surprise some who think all crime is local, but it is important to understand how agencies work. First, there are more than 18,000 law enforcement organizations in the United States, ranging from one-badge sheriff departments in Utah to monoliths like the NYPD, which dwarfs the FBI. America divides its law enforcement functions among local, state, and federal jurisdictions. And as one might expect, sources are distributed accordingly. A small town might find it burdensome to buy a single cruiser, While the FBI this year will spend more than $10 billion. It seems clear that police started out at a disadvantage and that apparent flaws in early reporting have grown each time the story was told. For almost 3 years, everyone from prosecutors and the defense to Dateline on NBC based their narratives on what Officer Nunez wrote in his initial report. But body camera footage shows he was shaken and at a loss for words, which may have contributed to statements that could be seen as judgmental and premature. Lawrence's report makes that obvious. Detective Blaker provided me with the following briefing. When officers entered the house, they found 2 deceased residents, Kernodle and Chapin, inside a bedroom on the 2nd floor. The officers also found 2 more deceased residents, Goncalves and Mogan, in a bedroom on the 3rd floor. We now know Nunez and Warner left the house for approximately 1 minute and 7 seconds before returning and deciding to, quote, clear it from the 1st floor to the 3rd. Only then did they find Mogan and Goncalves, as Lawrence reported. All the victims appeared to have multiple stab wounds. The sliding glass door located in the kitchen was open, and there was a set of footprints in the melting snow leading into and away from the residence. There was 1 shoe print near the western edge of the property, leading west into a neighbor's yard. In front of the residence were 5 vehicles belonging to the deceased residents. We have Kaylee's silver Land Rover or Range Rover that was registered to Jasmine D. Sumner. Xana's blue Civic registered to Jeffrey Kernodle. A white Chevy Cruze registered to Maddie's mother, Karen Laramie, and a red 2011 Jeep Wrangler and a black 2017 Ford Explorer registered to James Chapin. Sometime in the early morning hours, Mortensen awoken and opened her door, the 2nd floor, and heard a male say, "It's okay, Kaylee, I'm here for you," and cried. She then shut her door. A short while later, she opened the door again and saw somebody approximately 5'10", dressed in all black with a ski mask standing in the kitchen. She made eye contact with the person and could see they were Caucasian through the eyes cutouts. Now, guys, I'm going to skip ahead. My voice is starting to hurt, so I want to save my voice for the interview tomorrow. I hope that this gave a really good insight as to the way that the book is written and will help you come up with some awesome questions. But I want to leave you with a handful of, or at least a couple more bombshells. One being that when they talk about the bodies of Kaylee and Maddie being posed, I'm going to explain what that means. This blew my mind. Okay. So let me find it. Because I want to read it word for word to you guys. Where is it? Okay. Here we move from Sutton's summary, so the expert for the prosecution, to what the photos show. Though blurred in redacted images released by police, Kaylee Goncalves and Maddie Mogan were found lying on their backs in a full-size bed, partially covered with a beige comforter. Kaylee was lying atop Maddie's right arm, shoulder, and torso, with her left hand folded adjacent to her chin. Numerous observers have stated that Maddie was placed in a princess pose and that the 2 bodies appeared to have been staged as if they were cuddling. Okay, so I'm going to pull. So really, what this is saying, and I'll show this, like, that means that Maddie was posed like this, is how I'm interpreting that. Okay, so numerous observers stated that Maddie was placed in a princess pose and that the 2 bodies appeared to have been staged as if they were cuddling. The posture and proximity of the bodies of Kaylee and Maddie can't best be visualized when the comforter is removed. No blood is noted on the bottom or tops of their feet, indicating they were not upright or moving about the area after bloodletting injuries were inflicted. So then, though not otherwise discussed in Sutton's report, ISP crime scene analysts photographed 2 separate deposits of unidentified human hair in Maddie Mogan's bed. The first sample includes 5 separate clumps, dark brown or black in color, slightly curly, approximately 2 inches in length. They lie scattered over an area that appears to be 8 inches in diameter between Kaylee's right leg and the wall. The second hair sample is visible atop the beige comforter on Maddie's side of the bed, roughly between her knees. This lock of hair is several inches in length, shorter than any of the women's hair in the house, and markedly darker. Unlike the other samples, this strand appears to include bloody roots. One does not need a PhD in laboratory sciences to speculate that it was torn from someone's head. Now, I got to get to this other part because this is also nuts. Okay, before we move on to other parts of Sutton's report, we must understand what this suggests about the unusually violent mechanism of the crimes. According to this report, Mogan and Goncalves were not just murdered, they were butchered in a violent rage by an assailant fixated on what police refer to as overkill. The directionality, proliferation, and spread of blood spatter created during the attack exceeds what seasoned homicide detectives would expect to encounter, even in violent crimes of this nature. I'm trying to get to this part where they talk about how there was what the experimental wounds were. All right. 1 second here. So this is what I was talking about with the White Claw box. So right here, you see the box of White Claws, and listen to this. Most important, crime scene photographs appear to document that 2 of the diluted knee wall stains were found underneath a box of White Claw beverages. If true, this could prove that someone placed the box on top of the stains after Chapin was murdered. As we will see shortly, these previously undisclosed pieces of evidence alone seem to completely cripple the prosecution's assertions of a lone offender. In my mind, someone almost certainly transferred via touch Ethan Chapin's blood to the stairway after he and Xana were murdered. It appears most likely they did so while walking down to the first floor, not fleeing the house via the kitchen. Stain E was tested for the presented presence of blood and was positive, Sutton wrote in a report, referring to the 2 stains found on that flat wooden edge ledge under the White Claw box. Now, I wanted to find this one part that okay, this is crazy. So this gets to Dr. Turvey now. So Turvey seems right. None of this makes sense until one addresses other important considerations. The women on the 3rd floor, so Maddie and Kaylee, they both suffered what a behavioral analyst might identify as rage kill injuries, signature wounds. Both women had their throats slit from ear to ear post-mortem twice. Each of them had nearly identical gashes on their shoulder. So I'm going to read that again. Kaylee and Maddie both had signature wounds. They had their throats slit from ear to ear after they were already dead twice. Dr. Turvey goes on to say, this is very interesting. It tells us a great deal about the killers. You are seeing actions play out from more than one offender. Now, I would like to find the last thing that I'd like to talk about is this sheath. Okay, here we go. Dr. Turvey talking about the sheaths. Oops. Come on, where does he say it? I want to find the part where Turvey asks if this sheath is even from this crime. Okay, right here. At this point, Turvey produced a photograph never before disclosed to the public. It depicts a brown paper bag that has been folded flat and sealed with red and white tape labeled evidence. The bag itself is hand dated November 16th, 2022, and is signed by someone who, though difficult to read, appears to be Shannon Amident. There are 3 white stickers affixed to the bag. The first at the top says chain of custody and shows transfer on December 16th, 2022 from a person named Candy Florio to C. McKenna. On the line directly beneath that, the form documents same day transfer form C. McKenna to a person only identified by the initials TDO. That is just a guess, however, because the penmanship is abysmal. Beneath the label marked chain of custody is a second sticker titled Idaho State Police. Beneath that, it says place barcode here, though the barcode is actually placed at the bottom of the bag. The barcode sticker is labeled M20224841, lab item number 1. Bio, suspected biostain, swabs, miscellaneous items, K-bar sheath with USMC logo. After that, the label is marked Moscow Police Department agency case number 22 M099 or MO9903. Returning to the label above, someone has handwritten case number D2230, followed by description knife sheath, offense date November 13th, subject unknown. Most important, according to Turvey, the chain of custody portion on the form shows the following. So here they show the actual chain of custody. This is where it gets nuts. So I shrugged. It's a bag with chain of custody form attached. So I'm going to do a little exercise, Turvey answered. How many people, according to this chain of custody, have handled this item of evidence? How many different names? I counted them. 6 on the forms, plus the name on the bag. That's 7. 7. Yes. Amident, Florio, McKenna, Talbot, Payne, Willerfon, and Turrentine. It is not unusual to find 7 names on one piece of evidence, but it is odd to find 2 separate chain of custody forms. It is even stranger to have an evidence storage vessel, in this case, a brown paper bag marked with a name that does not appear on either of the 2 chain of custody forms. It seems to be a real problem that the date on the bag reads November 16th, 2022, 3 days after the evidence was supposedly bagged. First, we need to know that this is actually from this case. Okay, think of that. Dr. Turvey, the defense expert, says first, we need to know that this is actually from this case, Turvey said, laying the foundation of his argument. MPD, there it is. This is the knife sheath collected November 13th. And I just find that odd. What matters to me is that we have one handwriting up here from Florio to McKenna, and then McKenna gives it to somebody else, which is just initials that aren't even legible, Turvey said. But that's just the first label. Let's go down the actual chain of custody. And we know it's the actual chain of custody because it fucking says chain of custody on it right there. Oh, Turvey's a forensic scientist, but he also is passionate. This is a death penalty prosecution of 4 horrible murders. The stakes could not be higher. So now we've got 6 people on here. Let's say 7 with Amident on the bag. But how many forms of handwriting on this actual chain of custody form? The one in the middle that says chain of custody? 1. All the names, dates, and other information appear to be written by the same person. Exactly. Turvey nodded. So I want you to understand this is a problem. It is a significant problem for the prosecution. No matter what else happened, they would have been giglioed. And that is where Giglio versus the United States, which expanded Brady mandates regarding disclosure of exculpatory material to the defense. It requires the prosecutors to disclose all information that could impeach the credibility of any witnesses, including police officers. Crazy. And Hive, tomorrow night, Christopher Whitcomb, 7 p.m. Central, we will have the opportunity to interview him. We have 2 hours uninterrupted of myself, you all in the chat, and Christopher Whitcomb diving into this new book, Broken Plea. Very honored and excited to have Chris as a guest. Please, please, please make sure you do not miss it. I've got a ton of questions lined up for him. I'm going to be diving into the chat, asking him your questions. And I will be back on, like I said, tomorrow, 7 p.m. with Chris Whitcomb. Please hit like, please hit subscribe, join Hive Plus, and Hive, let's blow the damn lid off of this. I hope you all sleep good, and I will see you tomorrow here in the Hive, 7 p.m. with Christopher Whitcomb. Cheers.